2 weeks ago I did a video about the verb sein. You may have noticed, however, that I left out a few things that people normally say in English using a form of being. The reason behind this is there are certain things you can't actually say using the verb sein that you normally would use in English the exact same equivalent verb. So today I'm going to talk about those exceptions to the rule of when you should use sein and of course give you the examples of sentences that you should use instead. We'll start with the most common mistake both in English and in German. Whenever somebody asks you, "How are you?" in English you might hear people say, "I am good," which is not actually what you're supposed to say. In English you're supposed to say, "I am well," "I'm doing well," or something like that. If you're saying that "I am good," that's basically saying like maybe you're Batman or Superman and you're the opposite of evil or something like that, and that would be okay for you to say, "I am good, I'm not a bad person." But you can't really say that in English, but people do anyway. In German there's a similar problem that comes up whenever somebody asks you the question, "Wie geht's dir?" or "Wie geht es dir?" or "Wie geht es Ihnen?" or one of those variations of, how are you doing in German. If you answer the question with "Ich bin gut," you are essentially saying the same thing that you just did in the English version, except in this time it's just not going to be understood very well. Instead, you should say something like "Mir geht's gut" or "Es geht mir gut." You may have noticed that we still use the word gut, which does translate as good in German. This problem really isn't a thing in German because you can also translate this as well. Also, the phraseology of the German sentence clears up any confusion there may be. You may encounter a similar problem whenever you try to say something like "I'm not doing well," and you would say something like "Ich bin schlecht" in German. This essentially is the same problem. You're saying again that you're a bad person or that you are evil or something like that, as opposed to saying that you're not doing well, you're feeling ill or something like that. So instead, you should say "Es geht mir nicht gut," it's not going well for me, or "Es geht mir schlecht," it's going badly for me. As a side note, I wouldn't use either one of these options in German or in English, unless of course you're one of those people who just craves attention so much that you want to throw your own little pity party. In English, if the temperature of the room is above your desired range, you might say something like "I'm warm" or "I'm hot." In German, if you say "Ich bin heiß," it actually translates more as like "I'm hot and bothered," if you know what I mean. You should instead say "Es ist mir heiß," as in it's hot to me. A different problem arises whenever you say "Ich bin warm," which is what we would say in English for "I am warm." In some contexts, this actually makes perfect sense and gets the point across just fine. You might say, for instance, "Ich bin warm" if you are stretching before a sporting event and you're saying that you are ready to now participate in that sport. In some conversations, though, you might actually be misunderstood to have said "I am gay," which may or may not have been your intention. This, however, is a little bit of an older statement, and therefore most people will assume that you're talking about the temperature in the room rather than a sexual orientation statement. While we're on the topic of temperature problems, you also can't say "Ich bin kalt." Well, I mean you can, but it doesn't mean the same thing that you're thinking it does. This phrase is usually used whenever somebody's temperament is cold, as opposed to having the temperature cold. This means that they are aloof, a little distant, or maybe even unreachable. Such as, "You're as cold as ice, you're willing to sacrifice our love." Instead, you should say the same type of phraseology you had with the warm and hot examples and say "Mir ist kalt." You also might run into a little bit of a problem because of the phrase "kalt machen" or "jemanden kalt machen," which is to make someone cold, literally speaking, and that actually means to kill someone. Switching to colors, we have a different issue. Whenever somebody says in English that they are blue, it means that they're down or depressed. The most memorable joke about this is from The Lion King, where Timon and Pumbaa are talking about Simba, and they say, "I think he looks blue." And the other one says, "Oh, I'd say goldish brown." And then he's like, No, I meant he looks depressed." Anyway, so that joke, which you can find a link in the description for some videos if you want for that, for both the German and the English, but the German version skips over this problem entirely and makes a completely different pun. The reason behind that is you can't really say it in German. Because in German, whenever you say "Ich bin blau," it's actually saying that I'm drunk. If you want to say that you're sad, you could say "Ich bin traurig," like I'm sad, literally speaking. Another word of caution might be the word voll, which has a bunch of different uses and meanings, but one of them can be, if you say "Ich bin voll," it could mean either I'm full, I've been satiated, I have eaten my fill of food, or it could also mean, again, that I'm drunk. To avoid this confusion, you can just use the word satt instead of voll and say ich bin satt, and that means that I am full, I am satiated, and you don't have to worry about eating more, and you don't have to worry about people thinking that you're drunk. I'm sure these aren't the only issues that come up whenever somebody tries to translate forms of being from English to German with idiomatic expressions, so if you think that I've left off something from this list, go ahead and leave it in the comments down below. Otherwise, that's my list for today. Thanks for watching. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss.